Alright, hello and welcome my fellow chalice seekers. Welcome here to my first ever tier list. Yes, I have never done a tier list before. I've always wanted to. It is one of my favorite things to personally watch. So I thought, why wouldn't I do my own for a series that I love so much? And this actually came recommended to me on a subreddit because people love a more visual representation of ranking something from best to worst to best, etc. And that makes a lot of sense because with my ranking video that I did for all of the levels in the series, there's not really much of a visual to it. You know, you compare and contrast as you go, but it's pretty linear. So we will basically do that again, but with a focus on each specific game, with a presentation stance on how these levels compare to one another in this tabular form. And you're wondering why just one game at a time? Because we will be ascending together. Yes, we're going to ascend from what is widely considered the least favorite in the series to the favorite in the series. So what we're going to do is today focus on the levels of Resurrection in the tier list, and then in reverse chronological order, go up to MediEvil 2, and then another separate video for the original MediEvil. And if any one of these videos even does remotely well, just okay even, I would consider doing a big smorgasbord of all the levels, all 60 of them, again for a tier list, because it has a way of extracting different notions, thoughts, and opinions when you're looking at it across a table like this. So that is something I appreciate as a recommendation. Thanks to the MediEvil community for pointing me in that direction, because it wasn't really something I was thinking about before. But with the release of MediEvil 2 on the storefront for PS5, I just thought, okay, now's a good time as any. You know what? There's going to be a few people jumping into this series. At least I hope that is the case. If not, then this is something for us as fans to kind of chew on a little bit more, just enjoy ourselves a little bit. So I'm going to split them for now. Resurrection today, the other two another time, and then maybe all of them at once, just like with the ranking video. So as you can see here, we have 18 levels from the PSP version. The only thing I did as an amendment was I added the Welcome to the Sleeping Village level here. So I am borrowing the foundation of this tier from this wonderful chap here, Mayolis STR. Thank you so much for that. I suspect they put together those levels here, so I appreciate why you wouldn't consider Welcome to the Sleeping Village its own level or a full-fledged level, the same way you wouldn't consider something like Dan's Crypt a full level, and then you wouldn't rank it for that reason. But I am going to stick with it. I want to be consistent. This was what I did in the ranking video. And I think they are worth ranking because, you know, why not? We can have opinions on these. We can disagree on them. You can honestly say, you know, why even bother with the level? I think that's a good disagreement. That's totally fine. So that is the only thing I changed here. We have the 18 from the original. That's good. Oh, yeah. And then I think everything else is good and accounted for. So just before we start, we'll quickly go through the grading categories here, the letters themselves. And I can tell you right now, just as a little spoiler, you're going to see at least one level in each one of these categories. So just as an idea of my philosophy for each of these, I'll quickly explain why I would put something here. So starting with F at the very bottom, this is for levels that get virtually nothing right. It doesn't matter if it has a nice cinematic, it has a nice little dialogue scene, it might even use the colors well, but everything else falls apart. It is the composition that matters, right? Just like any other video game, a level is based on the factors and notions that come together. There's an architecture to it all. And for F, it just doesn't cut it. It just doesn't. These are the worst levels in the entire series. I don't even think we're going to see anything like this for the other two games when we get to them for tier lists. For Resurrection, there's going to be at least one. That I can assure you. For C, now this is where Resurrection is largely defined. These two categories here, C and B. When people think of Resurrection, they think of it as a mixed bag. They think of it largely as generic levels that, for the most part, did not live up to the original version. And that's true. I hold that opinion as well. For the most part, we're going to see a few surprises on this list, but going back to C, just before we get to B, this is for levels that aren't terrible, but I still don't look forward to playing. These are often the eye rollers. These are the ones that when I'm about to hit X, I go, all right, we're getting this over with. I want my chalice. I want this item. I have to just get through it. That is what C is reserved for. This is the quintessential generic category. That's what goes in here. And then on to B, which is good, fine. This stuff is okay. It sort of oscillates between mediocre to favorable. These are not levels I dread. These are not levels I roll my eyes at. It might have some generic components to it where it borrows maybe too heavily from the game it's trying to emulate. So if, maybe it's the graveyard to the graveyard or cemetery hill to cemetery hill, whatever it is, these are just levels I'm thinking of. It pulls too much from what it is inspired. So basically, it doesn't really do anything to innovate, and it doesn't do a whole lot to grasp your imagination as a player to enjoy yourself. But they're not bad, and it does enough well to make me think that I would enjoy playing this level again, and oftentimes I do. So that's what B is for. A is the good stuff. This is where we get into the levels that I look forward to playing. So this time when I'm hitting X, I'm going, all right, we're in for a good time. I'm ready to enjoy myself. This is where we get to see the imaginative mind come to life in the developer design. This is fantastic stuff. It's not quite the best, but this is some of the best that the game has to offer. So A is great, but not as great as S. And like I said, there is going to be at least one level here. This is not just a level that is great. This is a level that goes above and beyond. This is a level that I would say innovates and actually even transcends what the original was trying to do. S is thus for the levels where everything comes together and everything comes together excellently. The colors, the lighting, the soundtrack, the layout, the gimmicks, the way Dan has to sort of move through various missions, all of it is put together and wrapped into this gift to the player, and by doing so in an innovative manner as well as mentioned. So that is what S is there for, and I think there might even be more than one. Who knows? We'll see. But there's going to be something in S, so look forward to that. And with all that said, I think we are just about ready to start with level number 1. Let's get to it. Alright, first up is this gloomy looking Halloween house. I wonder what that is. It is inside the asylum from Resurrection. So I will say right off the bat, I was never a fan of the asylum. I didn't like the idea of descending level by level with ascending difficulty. I understand the original idea and intent, which was that it was an opportunity for you as Dan to unfold your arsenal that you had built up to at this point and to just have at her with the waves and waves of zombies that came your way. There's something to it, and I'm a big fan of Ratchet & Clank, for instance, and they have those arena levels. I enjoy those. There's something rewarding to it. The problem with how it's organized and distributed in this level, in addition to the original, so both Asylum levels have this problem, is that it doesn't do much in the way of just attack, floor. It just adds some hazards along the way, and then that's it. You're kind of done there. It would have been nice to have something more creative. What I will give kudos to inside the Asylum with Resurrection is that it added a boss. That was a notable absence in the original level. I don't know why they didn't have a boss. It's you're building up as you're going down. Why was there no boss? They added Mr. Axie in this one, and although I didn't care for him as a boss, either mechanically or as a character, it was something that they at least tried. So the execution of it was questionable, definitely. I think Mr. Axie is not well placed in Resurrection, let's put it that way. But I just didn't care for the boss despite the fact that it has a phase change. You have to notice what the pillars are there for and then use them in that second phase. But there's nothing really to do other than kind of just go around, you hack away when he's vulnerable after the hook shot, and then you get him to ram into each pillar individually. So it's very easy, really. On top of all that, you need to redo the level if you want to get the chalice. So where the mayor is locked in, that you have to free him, as you did in the original, there is around the corner something where you can bash the wall in with a club or a hammer, and across this molten path is a chalice. So you have to come back with the dragon armor, meaning you have to do all of that over again. You have to do all the floors, you have to do Mr. Axie again, and then put on the dragon armor so that you can make your way safely across to grab it. So you're going to be doing this level at least twice if you do want to activate your completionist mindset and to fulfill it. So it's not an F. I'm not gonna put it there, but I just don't think it's a good level. I would say it's a low C. I will be doing this kind of lateral, it's gonna be like horizontally lateral for each of the levels, so there will be high C, high B, low B, etc. This is a low C. I don't think they fixed what I thought was the issue in the original Asylum. It's not enjoyable now, it wasn't enjoyable then, and it is one of those levels where I do have to sort of just white knuckle through. I don't think they were creative with this one. Not enough, at least. Next up, Cemetery Hill. Oh boy, actually, I don't have as much to say about this one. Here's the thing about Cemetery Hill in Resurrection. It borrows too much from the level before it. Think about it. The art direction in the graveyard in Resurrection is what sets you into motion in the world. The way I think about it is that when you leave the graveyard and go into Cemetery Hill here, it doesn't really feel that distinct as a level. Contrast that with the original game. Think of when you're in the graveyard there, and then heading to Cemetery Hill where you finally meet Zarok. The layout, the atmosphere, the surprises that they have there really make it stand on its own. It is its own idea that you're going through. Whereas with this Cemetery Hill here, I think it was really just that they took the gimmick from the original game with having to manage your way around boulders as you're making your way to the top before the mausoleum, and then a couple of explorable sections there. So in terms of environment and how things feel, it really is the same as the graveyard that preceded it, which it did well, but the thing is, again, you're just kind of carrying that on without making it its own level, and that is a problem for me because I do like Cemetery Hill, and I think they could have done something like that here. Second is that the explorable sections there aren't really too eventful, but I do appreciate that they were at least interesting. It was kind of intriguing how they were kind of putting that together. It did give you a bit of an exploration feel. And they introduce you to the shovel and the fact that you have this mechanic that once in a while throughout the game, you will get to use. And if you were paying attention to the crypt, where there are some weak walls there that you can bash with a club, there's a section where you can dig that out. So you do have that introduced and brought into the rest of the game, which was not something you could do in the first game. So that's pretty cool. Where do I put this though? I think I'm gonna put this one in C. I see. Not a bad, oh, there we go. Not bad, not too bad at least, but I just think it struggles to distinguish itself in its identity from the level that came before it. And we'll get to that level later on the list, but that's just my opinion. Perhaps a little bit harsh, but yeah, I just don't think it does what the other Cemetery Hill did, was that it really did have an identity of its own when it came to what you needed to do and how it introduced you to exploration and uncovering secrets. The magic was not captured here. It didn't really do enough. Oh boy. I know you. I know this dragon. That, my friends, is Dragon Island. Alright, I guess I should say something. Dragon Island is the example of how you take what was the foundation from a great level in the original game and you just do the complete opposite. This is, I think, the worst level in the entire series. I don't think it gets any lower than this. The analogy I used in my ranking video when talking about this was that the Crystal Caves, which is what this is based off of, is the entree. It's this nice dish that you're served. And indeed, it is a nice dish. Let's be real. Crystal Caves is a banger. It's one of the best levels ever, I think. They decide here, for whatever reason, to take away all the things we loved about that level. The subtly haunting atmosphere, the crystallic and iridescent designs, everything suspended above you as the music chimes when you navigate your way through. Everything about it is so good. And we have none of that here. What we have in this level instead is just this bare, straight path that takes you to the dragon fight. So they're loyal to that. What happens is you have to memorize the locations which correspond to locations in the ceiling that would drop onto the dragon's head when he pops it up. okay. If you're a fan, you know what to do. That's pretty straightforward. That's boring. If you knew, it's a kind of a nice little mechanic, I suppose. They then add a little twist, which is really the only thing I would give it credit for, if it weren't for the fact that the fight itself is just horrible. It is so drab. Rinse and repeat based on these slight windows of opening that allow you to hit it. And as you see with the health bar, it just hit. You have to go after this guy so much. It is not fun. I don't just roll my eyes when I go into this level. This is a level I genuinely feel upset that I have to go through. It is just that poorly designed. Not for me, and it's not an optional level either. This is where you get the dragon armor. This is what you use to go back and uncover various secrets in the game, which is a comment to, or I should say compliment to, the overall design of the game, just like the original did. There's just nothing here I can really speak positively about, except for these slight bits of potential that it had. It is an F level, and it is to me still the worst level that the series has to offer. So, only going up from here, which is nice if we look at it positively. So, let's continue on with the next level, which is hopefully not an F. Okay, well I can tell you the next level is not an F, that is the Enchanted Forest, and I would say it's not an F level alone for the fact that it is so ambitious. There is a lot that this level attempts to accomplish in the spirit of newness. A couple of things right off the top of my head. You now have a full-fledged boardwalk at the top of the treetops with a hut up top, which will be used later on with one of the associated minigames built into the level, which is what I described as the poor man's ape escape. You will be given a net at one point, and you will have to locate, is it 5 or 6 of the fairies that you go in there before you are able to descend below and solve the puzzle. And that's the other thing I like, which is a good addition, was the puzzle, which is quite obscure in the original, is actually given a more calculated approach to what you need to do. And I enjoy it, actually. It's a good puzzle. The rest of the level itself is an absolute pain to navigate. The demons are not fun to deal with, and the same is going to be the case for the Haunted Ruins, which we'll come to later, because it's the same adversaries there. We have the same boss fight. That's okay. It pulls a lot from the original Enchanted Forest. I don't really fault it for that. Some of it is fine. I really adore those 2 additions that they made there, or changes I should say. They are genuine refinements. I love being up in the treetops just as I did in the original. It has something that brings this kind of awe in me. And in this case, it's really enjoyable to go through, as is the puzzle mentioned. The Indiana Jones reference is just fantastic too. Can't forget that as well. Everything else I don't care too much for. The only other thing really is kind of how spaced out parts of it are, which make it feel very inviting. And when you consider the fantastical setting, just as the original was comprised together in, it's nice. It's really good. I don't enjoy the rest of it. I don't like guiding stumps. I don't like guiding things in general in video games. We're going to get to more of that later here. But when it comes to guiding these stumps to get to certain locations, it's just not fun. It totally breaks the spell for what could have been an amazing experience here. And while I don't hate the very catching minigame that they've added here, sorry, not fun. Not my idea of fun. If you enjoy it, have at her. Have a blast. All that said, I think this is going to go in... We're going to put that in C. We are going to put that in between Cemetery Hill and the Asylum. Wow, we're off to a good start. I feel terrible, actually. We're going up, I promise. I promise there's going to be other levels in here. And, in fact, I can see one right now. And that's the next one. This is Gallowmere Plains, which is technically a hub world, and I'm not including the hub worlds in any of my tier lists, the same way I didn't include them in my ranking. So Hall of Heroes, Resurrection, and Professor's Lab. This is a different story, and in order to rank this one properly, we need to remember, as we do for these ones as well, and I am considering that for all of these levels, including the ones I ranked, this is a handheld device we're thinking of. It's not going to feel at home if you are playing on your PS5. I have it on my Vita, so that actually does feel quite nice there as well. But Gallowmere Plains is, in terms of content, very generous. The reason I'm emphasizing that it's a handheld is that I'm thinking back to my days when I took the bus to university or I took the school bus to high school. You have this time to kill. This is where handhelds flourish. And Gallowmere Plains is that level you can really pop into and just kill time playing minigames with, some of which are quite wonderful. I really enjoy the Pit of Death. I really enjoy Arrow of Fate. I really do not enjoy Shepherd's Delight, but we don't talk about that one. And Vermin Control is my favorite. I could smash these rats all day long. So much fun. And in addition to that, you can get hints and conversations with other people in the area, such as the Witch in the Hut. Again, I don't know what they were thinking depicting her like that, but the mechanic itself, at least, is notable and good for what they were trying to do in this section here. It's corny, but it's also humorous and fun at the same time. I love the circus vibes we have here, the freak show music in the back. There's so much that they do well here, both as a connecting point between where you have come from and where you need to go as things kind of branch off in the world of Gallowmere. You could spend a lot of time here, and there is even a kind of ultimate weapon here if you go through each of the levels for each of the minigames, which I think I've done once, and I don't recommend it. It's pretty grindy, but we do have the rewind function on PS5, so I guess you could think about doing that if you're going to play through. Again, completionist mindsets, unite. It's hard to get away from. I'm going to put this in B. And I think this is actually a higher B. I love what actually they were going for. The only reason I wouldn't put it higher is simply because... Actually, no. You know what? No, I'm going to put it in A, actually. We're going to put it in low A. I think it does too much to be considered here, because I do like Gallowmere Plains. Every single time I play Resurrection, I boot it up. I'm always playing at least some games here. I often do even just kind of the level 1, the first section for each of the mini games there, and then I carry on, and if I really am in the mood, then I'll start doing the intermediate and advanced sections for the mini games. I just enjoy it. I like what they did here. This was a great idea. So I'm bumping it up really just for the purpose of innovation. They thought outside the box with this one. Kudos to the developer team. So yeah, we're going to put that in A. Low A, so there will be some levels before it, but yeah, there you go. Our first strong level for the tier ranking, just in case you think I'm really trying to give this game a hard time. I promise I'm not. Next up is the Ghost Ship. I almost thought this was Scurvy Docks, actually. It's all the way over here. I always get those two mixed up when I kind of see an image of the loading screen on some community ranking or something like that. But this is the Ghost Ship. And as people know, if you've watched my original ranking video, Ghost Ship is one of my least favorite levels. The original Ghost Ship is something I've never liked. I've played that level dozens and dozens and dozens of times. I've never liked it. It is not going to change my mind. I appreciate some of the pushback I've gotten from some fans about what they think makes the original Ghost Ship strong. That's about as far as I can go. From my experience, never liked it. This one elevates on that one, in my view. I really like that there is a search and destroy, or in this case, search and find mechanic for locating these barrels that will help us launch to the other side of the ship. What I will just say right out of the gates, what I really don't like about it is that they kept the pirate captain as a boss in it, which I did not like at all in the original, and they made it worse. They made it even more of a grind. The club is a weaker weapon in this game. It is not as OP as in the original MediEvil, so you were kind of stuck switching and navigating between that and your other weapon because they love to throw mobs at you in these boss fights, as they do in so many games, which is such a big peeve of mine. And his health bar is made even bigger. You're going to be there for an even longer time than in the other game. It is just so annoying, and I was hoping that the cannon would kind of just send you to the next level, the next location, but no, it sends you to a worse version of the pirate boss, so boo, I don't like that. The layout is good though. The platforming is not as punishing. That skybox, I really love it. It's one of my favorites in the game for some reason. I'm not a big dessert guy, but the analogy I would use for these skyboxes is that they're like desserts. So think of this skybox with this lime hue in the sky. It's creamy. It makes me think of a key lime pie, which is one of the few desserts I really like. That is what makes me think of the skybox here. I just want to drink that up. It's so good. And it fits for some reason, because in the original, it almost looks like space, like you are way out into the heavens there. In this one, it gives you kind of a sense of undead dread. I don't know how else to quite put it, but also sort of elevating, a more humorous mood. It's kind of lighthearted as well, right? That's kind of the beauty of MediEvil. It just juxtaposes all of these different art directions and compositions of feeling together. And this level does that really, really well. The only other thing I would really say that is bad is that there could have been more shortcuts, but they did sort of consider that because it does feel quite big. You are going through different regions, different sections. You're actually going into the ship itself quite a lot. That is where a lot of your adversaries are too, in order to collect the chalice. The pirate officer, a mechanic that they also had in the original, I didn't really like that mechanic to begin with, because you're kind of just hammering towards the officer and then everything else kind of crumbles. They did change that a little bit, where they kind of are more interconnected in the way you have to manage and beat them. But still, I honestly think they should have just done away with it altogether. They did have one shortcut which I do commend it for. It's at the bottom floor, beneath those rotating platforms, the ones you have to jump on. One of the barrels is on top. Great. Excellent. I wish there was a little bit more of that though. Otherwise, good level. I don't mind this level. We are going to put that in B. That is our first B. Good job, Ghost Ship. Well done. Okay, return to the graveyard, followed by the graveyard. Interesting. We're going in reverse here. Okay, return to the graveyard. I like it a little better than Return to the Graveyard from the PS1. I think I'm excusing this level for taking the art direction from the original Graveyard, because that was the same case in the original game. So that criticism I made before of Cemetery Hill, I don't think that applies here. We have that Burton-esque sort of drab approach to what you're surrounding yourself in. It works really well here, and it works well in both levels, so I'm actually quite glad that they continued with that. You come back, you see the floating coffins as you did in the first level, which brings you to one of my favorite secrets ever in a game, and you have to really figure out what you're going to do. I actually got lost the first few times I was going through, like, okay, I'm looking for the door, where am I supposed to go, or am I supposed to use this key? But after you open the door with the stained glass demon's key, things open up more. It's not quite as narrow or straight of a path as in the original. We are actually getting into what is really the bourgeoisie, as I said, of the grave sites. We have now a more advanced use of the Angel's Gaze mechanic, and we're actually using that to connect between different points in this hill. It's almost like a cemetery hill of its own. It's a great use of what was something that was previously used in the original game and in this one. I think it's really good. They also got rid of that silly boulder push gimmick that they had in the other one, which would get you the platforms, which you can cheese if you're really good with your Dan movements, which I was at one point. I'm not anymore. But we don't have that here. Once you dig out the grave site at the very top, the apex of the hill, you get the Anubis stone, and then you move on to the guardian wolves at the end. And they did something nice with that as well, where you kind of get this warm-up fight with a pack of wolves. It's really cool. You can honestly swing your hammer or one of your weapons all at once to kind of enjoy this badass moment. Just before the cinematic kicks in and the two wolves descend and begin to prowl around you with this menacing look as Dan carefully tries to feel how he can counter them as well. It's a cool cinematic. I don't know why I love it so much. I just think that this was something I didn't know was missing in the original game. Really cool thinking with that. Where am I going to put this one? I think I'm actually going to put this one in A as well, just below Gallowmere Plains. I like this level. I look forward to it. It's certainly not the best the game has to offer, but it improves on the Return to the Graveyard in my view. In other words, I look forward to this more than I do with the other Return to the Graveyard. I think that one is, fine, but I would say compared to this, we have an upgrade here, in my view. Speaking of upgrades, oh boy, going to be a hot take, maybe a double hot take, because I said this one is better than the original. I think the same thing for the Graveyard. I think this is better than the original, which is probably damning as a fan of the series, because The graveyard is you're welcome. This is like a bear hug to Gallowmere. Welcome here, Dan. Welcome here, player. This is what you're in for. And they're both classics. I love the original graveyard. What I like about the graveyard here is that it uses that foundation and it transcends itself through art direction. The colorization and lighting in the original is great. But here, this is where we see that Burton-esque kind of approach really being executed. It's near flawless. The way the trees kind of tilt in cartoony and exuberant fashion. I never get tired of it. I love seeing it in the background as I even backtrack. I go around, I have this rune, I have this item. We go back to break these rocks, for instance, and I have that natural landscape around me. It is so well considered, and it just makes the entire experience so much more enjoyable. I think that was something that could have been more utilized in the original at the time, but that's again not faulting it for that. I love the original graveyard. They added more to this level what I think they could have added to it. So I think we are actually going to put this one to A as well. I think the only fault I can really find with it is that the backtracking and moving around the level is a little bit weird. You kind of have to go through winding paths. It does lack shortcuts, as many of these levels do when it comes to trying to figure out where, an item or rune you just picked up has to go. So that can be a nuisance, but again, thank goodness for the fact that it is just so easy on the eyes when moving around. I'm going to put this one above Gallowmere Plains. I hope I do not get hate mail for that one, but I might. Alas. Okay, I think this is actually the last level from the introductory Gallowmere section before we move on to wider Gallowmere. I guess you have Dan's script over here. But of the main levels, this is the last one, and this is inside the mausoleum. I don't really need to think this one out loud before I go. We are going to put that one at top A. This is... Hey, there you go. Get out of there, graveyard. This is not quite as good as inside the mausoleum. So it's kind of a paradox here, because I think it's better than these ones, but it doesn't do better than the original mausoleum. And that's simply because the original mausoleum is one of my favorites, and not just that, but one of the best. It continues the legacy of the mausoleum we had by keeping you on your feet. It forces you to adapt to a form of quickness as you're making your way through this level, particularly through the bottom part, and it introduces you to the first boss in the game as well. Most of this, probably all of it, is just not quite as well done as the original. And I think this is an example really where it borrows from the foundation, but it doesn't go beyond it. And that's totally okay, because what it does do here is good. I like it. It's okay. When you reimagine something, you don't always have to transcend the original. It can be something on its own. In fact, often I prefer it that way. It doesn't have to identify itself identically to what was done before. In this case, I love that it was able to redesign the demon. I love that it was able to add a notable secret in a corner of the basement in this church. And it has its own art approach as well. That's something that is so phenomenal in the original, and I'm so glad that they took pains to do what they did with the dark light searing its way through the windows as we refamiliarize ourselves with the atrium of this church and descending into the belly of this demon-hosted mausoleum. Excellent stuff. Yes, I know this quagmire. I know this swamp. No, but seriously, I actually don't mind this level. This is, if you couldn't catch from my hint, Pools of the Ancient Dead. I wasn't a fan of the original. I'm a little bit more of a fan of this one. I like that it has the gimmick of knocking things around. It is something that forces you to adapt. You can't just swing and hack, you have to be selective. And it's a great feeling to actually knock these over. I'm a sadist. I just enjoy watching them sink to their death, swallowing their souls away. I wonder if that was an inspiration. What I also love here is the direction they went with the presentation. It really is evocative of a fantasy setting. It has this dead forest permeating the idea of dead life reawakened from something that happened ages ago on that battleground. And as mentioned with the ghost ship, right, it has that lime-hued sky. You see a little bit of that here that tinges against these dead trees, all these crooked branches, going to and fro, which paints this kind of atmosphere as we make our way around a level. And that's what can make, honestly, the dullest, bare bones layout even more enjoyable to go through. Passable, even. I love it. I quite enjoy it. And the layout isn't even that bad. You get more of the space to explore with the fort that has been put in place there. You don't really get that in the original. The fort is well thought of. It's well established, and it's something that you see was in place for the original game, but it was kind of brought to fruition in terms of what it should have been here. So this was them sort of correcting and building, finalizing what should have been in the original. So it gets points for that as well. That is something I appreciate about it. It has that mini game with the target practice, the arrows. I mean, hell, the arrow of Faded Elamir Plains is better than this. It feels like it was just kind of tacked on. It feels very cheap. I don't even know why they put that there, to be honest. Anything other than that, really, the soundtrack was kind of what threw me off the most about this level. It just feels like they put everything together and they realized, oh, what music should we do for this? And they just kind of dropped a track into it. It's not fitting at all, and they could have done something with it because the track in the original, oh my goodness, the soundtrack in the original is one of the best placed that you will find in the series. That is a battlefield. That is the haunting grounds of something that happened in the past that you are revisiting. I don't get that here, especially not from the music. So there is a spirit and an essence that isn't quite captured here that we would have had in the original game, but it does a few things well. So I don't think I'm going to put this in C. I was thinking about that because it is still a bit generic, but I think it's okay here. I think right in the middle is fine. It does enough well to be considered something I don't slog through. Despite being a swamp, it is something I move through with relative enjoyment. It's good. And my day has already been made just by looking at this icon. This, my friends, is Pumpkin Gorge in Resurrection. And Pumpkin Gorge in Resurrection goes straight S. This is the best level in the game and a shining example of what you should be doing when reimagining something you've been inspired by. Pumpkin Gorge and Pumpkin Serpent, we need to talk about both when discussing Pumpkin Gorge and Resurrection, are not bad levels. I don't mind them. I would say, for me, actually, they're kind of the BC category in my books when I would think of them as a tier list, but we'll see what that's like when we get there. Point being, they are definitely not S tier levels. Not to most of us. For me, they had very deep flaws, which to me hindered what I would otherwise be able to enjoy in them. The Pumpkin Serpent being a little bit better. Pumpkin Gorge, in the PSP version, does the opposite of what Dragon Island does. What Pumpkin Gorge does is it decides to take note from what inspired that level and to just elevate everything. Absolutely everything. This level makes me feel like I'm in a fairy tale. This is the most excited I get for a level in this game. I look forward to searching and destroying for the pods of the Pumpkin Serpent. I enjoy the build-up, especially my first time when I had no idea that this was actually a combination of the two levels, and that they were better together. It is the kind of level, as I said originally, that I didn't know I wanted. And this was something the developers gave us. We really rethought this one. We've totally reimagined it as we've been trying to do with the rest. And this is the best result of the bunch. I love everything about it. I love the colors. I love the space usage. I love how I can just move around and feel as though there's always something to explore, something to do, and something to enjoy for the senses as I just glide along with Mr. Fortesque in this winter gourd-plagued land. The witch is hilarious. The mushrooms or caps, whatever they are called, to navigate to and from is much less of a nuisance than the first, and it allows you to oversee and overlook the rest of the presentation and the layout that comprises this fantasy setting. Really, my only complaint about it is the boss fight. It's not even a bad fight. The serpent was fine. I quite like that you're locked into what is a boss fight to tell you that this is a boss fight, but it's a straightforward matter where, again, you're sort of timing things out so that you can exploit the vulnerabilities and weakness when they present themselves, and then it's over. But thankfully, it's not overdone. It's not like the pirate captain boss in Go Ship. It's not like the dragon in Dragon Island. So this is kind of a happy medium. It's better too than Mr. Axie. That is the only weakness I can really think of here. Everything else is an absolute joy. So this one is a lock. I am going to be keeping this one here. It is not going to be topped by any of these here, but that's not to say any of them may or may not come close. So we will take a look shortly. And we go from an amazing level, one of the best in the entire series, to one of the worst in the series. We've already done Dragon Island. We are now going to Welcome to the Sleeping Village. And that is just a little bit better than Dragon Island. Here's the thing about Welcome to the Sleeping Village. It is the most unnecessary level in the game. We don't need it. Everything that is accessible here will be present in the Sleeping Village to come. If it was able to provide its own gimmick and allow you to explore regions of the village that were not present in the original, while allowing you then in the future to experience the village as given to us in Resurrection, I'd be singing a different tune. I would be describing this differently. Obviously, I'd be judging it on those merits. But that's kind of something I would have expected, even going through and in retrospect of the level. But this is just a tiny taste of something that didn't need to be there and is given to you in better form to fruition of the original. I don't know what they were thinking with this. I really don't. I think that could have been scrapped easily, and I would imagine that if they had another chance, they probably would have done that, or they would have actually added this to make it fleshed out as a level. Because this does not feel like a full level at all. This is just a tiny 5-minute experience, if that, before you move along to the asylum. It is completely unnecessary. It does not do anything that allows you to enjoy the game more. It basically gives you a cinematic and the rest as a placeholder. That's really what this level feels like. So in F you stay. May you join the dragon and have a harmony of your F tier ranking. Good sir. Next is Dan's Crypt. Probably one of the most difficult to rank on this list because it isn't exactly... How do you describe Dan's Crypt in this game? Easily the most unique of the bunch, in that it is not a museum, which is a full level in MediEvil 2, and then Dan's Crypt in the original game, which is not even a tutorial, I guess you could call it one, but essentially it's you just kind of going through a couple of texts and picking up a couple of things. You can hit walls if you like, but it's not a proper tutorial. This is a proper tutorial. You have dummies that you can practice on. You have books that log combos and different abilities that you can use, which is introduced in this game. That's very well done. I'm glad they did that. You have a bestiary. Dan has his own journal. You have a couple of secrets to actually pursue if you so choose, if you have that kind of eye. One of which is, it was mentioned before, if you remember what it was like in the original MediEvil, you would just think, okay, I'll get my hammer and I'll come back and smash that wall open. That indeed is here. But this time you have to bring a shovel as well, which was introduced to you in Cemetery Hill. So it actually gets you to do a couple of things together. And furthermore, one of the best secrets in the game, especially when it comes to weapons, because it's the chicken drumstick, the coveted poultry weapon that we get to use to turn our enemies into chickens and to consume them for health, yum yum yum, is hidden behind a lava path which you have to use the dragon armor for. So that's not for a while until you basically beat this guy. That's another secret that's placed there. So what they did was they took what was a drawback, a huge drawback to me, from the original crypt, and they iterated meaningfully on it. It's not a massive level, it's not a big level, and there's not really that much you can do here in respect to explorative purpose. It's just really there to get your feet wet and to sort of come back once in a while, either to try out some new combos and weapons, or to see what secrets there are. And there's not that many, but they did a lot more than MediEvil 1. So, kudos to that. I think I'm going to put this one at low B. Again, difficult to rank because I wouldn't really consider this level as thoughtful, as daring, as bold as, say, the Enchanted Earth, or even Cemetery Hill. In many cases, these are better levels in a way, but again, it's kind of what the intent was, what they were doing, and the overall contrast in which I enjoy and experience these levels. I just prefer to go to this one, and I would actually go back and replay these ones. I'd have a tougher time with these. Next, we have Haunted Ruins. Oh boy, where in the world am I going to place you? If this was the original Haunted Ruins, I know where I would put it. Oh my goodness, one of the greatest levels ever. Haunted Ruins in this version is an example, like many here, that just borrows too much from the original and does quite a few things worse. It's also one of those levels, like a couple others I've mentioned, where I don't fault them for it. Haunted Ruins is as tall of an order as it gets. It's right up there with Crystal Caves and Sleeping Village. This is an immaculately difficult to try and re-imbue the player with the spirit and magic of something that was so dark, somber, and evocative in what it was doing with that gothic sensation. My God, you just can't do Haunted Ruins like Haunted Ruins. Nothing in the world ever will again. That is such a special level. That said, they added some interesting layout changes, not too many. They had the chalice hidden actually underneath the entrance to Peregrine's Throne, close by the entrance. There's a platforming section there which is a little bit annoying, but serviceable. I don't mind that it's there. But the chalice is hidden in the lava, which rewards you for your consideration of the fact that maybe something is hidden there. So you put on your dragon armor, and there it is. There's the chalice. Excellent. Otherwise, the rest of the level is pretty similar to the original Haunted Ruins. And the art direction, which was trying to do its own thing, that's good. I am very glad that that's what they were doing with this game all along. But it's just not Haunted Ruins. I think that's kind of a cheap response to keep making again and again, but I think that's what I'm going with. This is a tier list after all. I'm not going to be quite as analytical with these as I will have done so with a ranking. But I think this level through, I talk about what I enjoy, what I don't enjoy. It really comes down to the fact that it is just nowhere near to the original. It does a few things well, just nothing that notable. And it's not a level I look forward to. In fact, when I load this screen, it just makes me think of the Haunted Ruins I love and cherish. So I am going to put this in B because I like the level. I do get enjoyment out of it. There is a sense of pleasure I have in it, but I think that's as generous as I can be with this one. Pretty harsh to put it under Dan's script, I know, just after placing it, but c'est la vie. Okay, I think this is Zarok's Lair. Oh my goodness. A tough one, and it's only a tough one because I'm wondering if I should put it in C or F. This is not a good level. It's not a good level at all. In fact, I think I am going to put it at the top of F. I'm in a good mood. I'm feeling generous. I'm feeling pretty good. What they should have done with this, hindsight bias, I know, hindsight is 20/20. What you do with something like this is you look at the original, you look at the introduction to the region of Zarok, so before the time device. When I think of this level, I can't help but think of the entrance hall. What a golden opportunity to take what is one of the most forgettable levels of the original game and do something with it here. You find a way to creatively connect the two. Or you could have the entrance hall sort of separate. You could have that after the ghost ship, just like the original, and then double the size, give it more space, give it more enemies, and be as creative and imaginative as you can with that. And then find a way to add that to this level here. I'm not too sure. I guess you can see that, I'm kind of scrambling for ideas as well. I just wish they would have done something else with the fight. I don't care much for Xerox Lair to begin with. I kind of like the aura of humor, the comical approach that they took with it, right? Xerox, until the very end, is poking fun at you. He's making jokes. That comical approach is ever present as you are taking him on in this grand finale. And a positive I will say about this one is the design of him as this giant serpent. What a really good idea. It looks phenomenal, actually. The fight itself, different story, straightforward. Not terrible, but very, very straightforward. Everything before that is really what I don't like. It's the same thing as the first, but in my view, worse. I guess Lord Cardok, for instance, is an example of something that did have more thought put into it, because you can just ransack the guy and kill him in seconds if you have the magic sword. If you have the enchanted sword in the original MediEvil, it's just done. It's a joke. You're OP. But in this one, nothing worthwhile. I don't know how to play devil's advocate with myself and say, maybe it's a little bit better. No, I'm keeping it there. Sorry. And next is Scarecrow Fields. Oh boy. I like the Scarecrow Fields in Resurrection. Not as much as the original. The original Scarecrow Fields is one of my favorite levels in any video game. And it's not even my favorite level from the series. So it goes without saying that I don't think this one is quite as good. But some good strengths. What I don't like about the level was the mechanic they had with lighting those haystack monsters on fire as more of a requirement. You basically have to. And there's a couple of sections, especially just before you get to the farm section, the barnyard section, and where the chickens are, you have to go to great lengths to a certain fire spot to use it there until you can actually find maybe something. What you can do, I guess, suppose, is you can go wait until you get to the dragon armor and then come back with that. But obviously you don't want to wait to make use of the chalice and exit with that if you can. So that was a bit of a design flaw, I thought, and there's a couple of spots like that in the game. That said, the skybox is excellent. The art direction is excellent. The layout is excellent. They retained the obstacles from the original and then modified them just a little bit in case you're too familiar with them, which I very much am in the original game, as many fans are. They did a really good job with that. A couple of secret exits and entrances. The corn maze is as much a joy as ever to go through. I like what they kept. The chicken guide part, goes without saying. Like I said, I don't really care for those kinds of missions. I don't hate it though. So I'm not going to actually dock it points for that. I think whatever. It's fine. I think I'm being a little too petty. They were thinking of something new. So what you're seeing everywhere are these landmarks of consideration for gameplay. We want you doing something here, here, here. They're always offering something. Kind of reminds me of the Freak Show. It reminds me, of course, of the Scarecrow Fields. And it reminds me of all the other levels where you are busy doing something. You're invited to, hey, try this, do this. So they added a couple of their own twists to this version. Shout out to that. But is it an A tier? Or is it a B tier? It's not an S tier. It's for sure not that far. I'm sorry. Pumpkin Gorge is in its own lane. But I think I'm going to put it in high B. I think I'm going to put it above Ghost Ship here. It is a very strong level. Right below Return to the Graveyard. I've had a sudden change of heart. Put you there. Let's put you there. Look at that. Tier lists are fun. Oh, I should do this more often. Oh, I'm having a great time. But alas, only 2 levels left. And the next one is Scurvy Docks. Another tough one. And it's a tough one because it's at least an A, but is it an S? Do I put it on the same level as Pumpkin Gorge? My gut says no. And I think I'm going to listen to my gut. I think I'm going to put it at the very top of A. So Scurvy Docks is an example, just as Pumpkin Gorge was, in that it takes something we didn't care much for in the original and improves upon it. It scraps some things. In this case, it totally scraps the idea of a lake level, which is one of my least favorites in MediEvil. What it does then too is it adds this kind of story element. We get this self-contained lore within this town. We get this clerk who is very kooky, he's very scatterbrained, and is tasking us with basically going around this entire region trying to collect items. So we play dress up. We got some Whitechapel stuff going on here, man. That's fantastic. And I think they knocked it out of the park. I love knocking cannonballs into that ship. I love going around the cliffside. I love going through the cliffside. And I love parading around the dock. I love going around the town square. All to say, the design is near flawless. Just about. There were a couple of points where I think they could have used more landmarks, and I think the designers knew that, and it might have been some kind of constraint that didn't allow them to. The dock itself, for instance, if you go around the corner, especially by the lighthouse, it feels like something should be there. Crucial, important, maybe going in and getting a rune of some kind. But I'm really grasping at straws when I say that. I do wish that was the case. I really am, and I'm complaining almost for no reason, because everything else in the level is so strong. And we get an upbeat tune, which is basically a pirate theme with sort of this, upbeat, buoyant sense that we get to enjoy as we explore. It fits perfectly with this level. Oh, and the skybox. Oh my god. Enough said. Enough said. This is composition close to its finest. Just imagine being able to play this level on your handheld. You play this on the bus. You play this on a road trip or something. This would just make you smile all the way through. Great level. Thank you so much for Scurvy Docks, and thank you for sparing us from the lake. Okay. The last one, not least, is the Sleeping Village. But it's not that Sleeping Village. Well, this is a hard one. Where am I going to put you? Where am I going to put you, my boy? Where am I going to put you on this fine list? I guess I'll start with the negative on this one. My mind has not changed from the ranking video. My biggest gripe is how it totally misses the sensation, the spirit, the magic, the essence. Think of verb or adjective to describe what the village is and what it does to the player. It misses crucially because of the poor soundtrack that they chose for this. I have no idea what they were thinking. It is one of the biggest disappointments to me in the entire franchise. It is not to say that this could have been at the level of the original Sleeping Village. I think that's about as tough a request as you can make. But you could have gotten close. You could have done something that wasn't too far off from what we experienced with the Sleeping Village. And they were doing some things that played to the strengths of the original level, with their own additions, such as a sunken warehouse, for instance. They added crenellations on the side. They hid the chalice even better. You can overlook the river, you can look to the sky, and just as the original, it gives you a sense that there is dead life here. You get the kind of gothic paradox of what MediEvil is all about in its presentational approach. But it doesn't come together for that very reason, and that is a big one. It is key to be able to use music that matches the colors, that makes them come more alive the way the original did. So it does many things well the way the original did. It does not match it even close when it comes to how I feel playing this than when I feel playing Sleeping Village on my PS1. So I'm going to put you in the middle. You're going to be a B tier, my PSP Sleeping Village friend, and I'm going to put you, I think, right there. I'm going to be generous. I'm going to be nice. I do actually think that this does supersede the rest of these here in terms of what I get out of it. It is an enjoyable level still, but it unfortunately is forever damned by the shadow it is attempting to follow. And that is the list. I think I'm going to do a quick once over just to see if I've had another change of heart. I did, after all, exchange Return to the Graveyard and Scarecrow Fields here. I'm happy with those here. And I think this is pretty okay. I wasn't expecting it to turn out this way, actually. We've got quite a few in A. We got 5. My goodness. We have 3 in F, though. Oh my... Dragon Island was a lock. That was going in here no matter what. So when I said at least one, that's what I was talking about. The other two kind of crept in there, but I'm not surprised that they're there. Or Resurrection. Maybe this is a controversial list. I don't know. This is my first ever list. This makes sense to me when I look at it. I don't see an issue. But I'm hoping to hear from you to think if you have issues, or if there's something you thought was ill-considered on my part. Like I said, this isn't really as analytical as a ranking video that I would do. This is more so you and I having coffee, right? You and I just having some tea, we're having a drink, and we're just chatting. We're just having a nice time talking about the things we like or don't like about the levels from a series that we love so much. So I think I'll leave this here, and I hope to hear from you. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you look forward to the next one, which should be MediEvil 2. So stay tuned, and thank you so much for stopping by. Take care.